Hi everyone, I am Jeff Lawton. I'm going to look at a game from Bunratty Masters weekend tournament, which took place in Ireland last weekend. Attracted a strong field, and including none other than Nigel Short, who's World Championship finalist in 1993 against Kasparov. Nigel won the tournament, the only player to score 5 out of 6, followed by Liz Parts, IM on 4.5. Also, GM Keith Arkle on 4.5. And there was also a close group, including the junior GM Simon Williams on 4 points. So the game that Short said he was most proud of, and it's a fine attacking game, a miniature, was against Vlastimil Hort. Vlastimil Hort was a World Championship candidate back in the late 70s. He lost a very close match to Boris Spassky that year, and nowadays he's still at 76 years of age, still very active on the chess circuit, and he also he writes lots of interesting stories, recollections about players from years ago, like many famous chess players that he was friends with, which are very interesting to read. So in the game, Nigel opened e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5, and we have the Berlin defense, knight f6. Got the main line with castles, knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop takes c6, and now instead of the main line that we see a lot of, Hort played a lesser known variation, b takes c6, d takes e5, and now knight to b7. So the idea is to develop the bishop to e7 and probably to play the knight round this way. Rook e1, bishop e7, and now knight d4, occupying the strong square in the centre, perhaps intending here. But I think the main idea is to hinder black's freeing move, d6, because then the pawn is on pre here. So castles for black, knight c3, f6, trying to break up the white centre. Instead of this, I guess, is the alternative, sort of bringing the knight around this way. Hort decides to attack the centre with f6, and now bishop f4, which may actually be a new move in the position. The idea is that if black now goes ahead and takes, then white's happy to have the bishop on a strong square instead of the pawn. So Hort played sort of a natural looking move, c5, hoping to drive the knight back and force it, or maybe to f5, but then I guess the intention might be to capture here then. But it met with a really strong reply, which was easy to overlook really, which was knight d5, sort of a stunning move. And the idea is that if black now captures the knight, which refused to move, then ef6, the point being that we're opening up an attack on the c7 square. For example, if bishop f6, then bishop c7 wins the queen. You could try this in the line because that covers that square and it keeps an extra piece, but then runs into knight e7, which we can't capture due to the skewer picking off the rook. And if king f7 we can't do because of queen h5. Not that you'd really think of a move like that anyway, but king h8 runs into check. That's forced, and then queen g4. You can either go here or here. If you go back into the corner, it runs into bishop d6, and then this diagonal is open with deadly consequences. And if king here, there's probably several ways, but bishop here is a quick way to do it, with the intention of queen g7 taking on f8. You can't play this because then Queen F5 wins, and then something like this. Discovered check followed by taking on E7. Excuse me. And if you play here, then Queen G7 check, King E8, and now Queen takes F8 is mate due to the pin on the bishop. So C takes D4 doesn't work. So instead of that, Hort played the much stronger move, Bishop E5. So Bishop takes E5, and this time if CD4, the line's shorter really, because Bishop C7, Queen E8, and then we can play just capture this, and with a completely winning position. Queen D4 is coming up, like it's very centralised. Oh, is it 2 pawns up, and it's all over. So in the game, Hort played the move Bishop to D6. He can't play D6 even if there were some reasons to play it, because it runs into this, forking the Queen and Bishop. So he tried the move Bishop to D6. And now this met with a very strong reply, and again an unexpected knight jump by White, which Short found. Now the point this time is that first it's sort of funny that White moved his other knight, offering to sacrifice this knight, but this time the knight itself moves, offering to sacrifice itself. But the point why you can't take the offered knight is after Rook F5. Bishop D6 again has lots of threats, knight E7, but taking on C7. So if you play knight here, sort of covering the rook, unfortunately runs into knight E7, King H8, knight F5, knight F5, and then the sting in the tail is Queen D5, forking rook and knight, and then White emerges with an exchange ahead. So in the game, Hort played the better move, Bishop E5, and now Rook E5. So if we sort of just take stock, the board's cleared a bit in the middle, but White's now got 3 very, advanced centralised pieces, and these are 3 attackers very near to Black's king. There's really only, Black's really only got these sort of 2 defenders, and the Queen can also come into the attack very soon as well. So it's looking dangerous, and one of these knights is going to land on the E7 square. Now, if you try and kick away the pieces with D6, for example, then knight E7 is strong, and after King H8, well, you could play this. And the threat is Rook H5, King H7, Rook H7, King H7, and then Queen H5 is mate. It's interesting that this is also mate if we had a rook on this square. I think because the knight is covering sort of 2 escape squares, it's sort of a standard mate if you didn't know this. I think this is covered in there's a book from years ago called The Art of Checkmate, a book with I think it's with a blue cover. It might be an old Dover book or something, and it covers these sort of standard mates if you want to sort of learn about them. There's things like Morphy's mate. I can't quite remember which one that is, but I think this one is Anastasia's mate, but my memory is not what it used to be. But after D6, knight E7, King H8. Also, instead of Rook H5, just simply Rook E3 is strong, and there's just a lot of pressure against the Black King anyway, and Queen H5 threatening knight G6 is coming. Anyway, for example, if you try a move like Bishop D7, then Queen H5 threatening knight G6, and then if Queen E8, we can play, just calmly come back to H4. So again, this is a very strong piece. It's far advanced, and it cramps the Black King. There's also a threat of knight C7, winning the exchange. And if for example, black tries to play queen f7, then something like this is strong, forcing queen e6, knight c7 anyway. So black's trying to escape tactically, sort of hoping for this, and then bishop g4. But well, there's several ways to win, really. I actually think queen g4 might be good anyway. But if you can always win the exchange with knight a8 because queen h4 runs into checkmate. So d6 doesn't appear to work. Knight d6 sort of similarly is not great either, because then we've got queen h5 threatening Anastasia's mate, if that's the name. I'll have to look that up afterwards. And so if you play queen h5, yeah. If you play something like queen e8 to stop this, then queen h4, and then if you try, say, queen f7, then there's always, well, there's lots of ways to win, aren't there? It's not really a great line to have shown, but there's something like knight f4, and if it takes, knight g6 check. But in the game, Hort played a5, trying to bring his rook into the game on a6, and then queen g4, which threatens checkmate straight away. Black more or less is forced to play this, which is what Hort played. If you play rook f7, you run into knight h6, and then knight f7, and rook e7, and it's all over. So there's no choice but to play the move g6. And now knight e7 check. And in this position, Hort played king h8. You're not really going to consider a move like king f7. I mean, it's the only other real try, but obviously white's now got it's got four pieces swarming around the black king. So it's not really going to survive without much analysis. But queen h4 seems to be a killer move, and then if gf5, we can take on h7. For example, if you play here, I mean, there's several ways to win, but one is rook f5, king here. Then okay, we can win this way, queen check, king here, bringing the last piece into the game, and that's checkmate. So, and if you play queen h4, if you try rook h8 here instead of taking the knight, then knight h6 check. You can't go to the back rank with king f8 because of queen f6. And then checkmate next move on h8. And if you try king g7, then it runs into this time the other knight comes to f5. And, well, you're more or less forced to take the knight this time, because if you drop back here, white rather elegantly can bring in the other rook. And now rook e8 is a threat, and you can't take the queen because it's checkmate, because the knights are covering the two escape squares, which is rather nice. And if you play gf5, there's, well, among other things, rook e8 check, queen e8, queen f6 check, and then checkmate on f7. So black would be forced after this knight to f5 to try gf5, and then we have knight takes f5, and again the king's got nowhere to go. If you try going back, there's just mate in 2. If you go back this way, it's something similar. Again, queen here, king, and then checkmate. Okay, so we can try king g6. So king g6 doesn't work as well because of same thing. You get caught on g7. And if you play king f7, then we can play rook e7. Again, you can't go back because of similar checks with the queen. And then, well, there's several ways to win for white, I imagine, but you could just play here, king f6, queen g7, and sort of chase the king down the board in almost like an old Morphy game. Definitely got a Morphy style finish here, king f4, and then queen g3 is mate. So black can't play king f7, so Hort played king h8, and now Short found the very elegant way to cap a fine game off. He played knight g6 check, hg6, queen g6, and now the threat is, well, obviously queen g7 checkmate. You can't take on f5 because, well, perhaps it's just the simplest, followed by rook h5 mating, or rook f8 mate. And if black tries a move like queen f6, then we can play queen h5, king g8, and this time knight e7. The only square for the black king is g7. Well, that runs into rook g5. This time the king's got every single square for the king is covered by white's pieces swarming around it. So you'd have to give the queen up, and then mate is imminent. To win the game, like I say, Short, I guess Hort might have just tried this for a bit of a laugh, why not? And Short played queen g7, checkmate. So, very nice game. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you do like the games, this game, then please give it a thumbs up. That would be great, or subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye now.